Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver and to another episode of The Shrink and the Pundit, where I, Jeff the Pundit, join my good old buddy, Dr. Keith Witt, the Shrink. How you doing, Keith?
Always happy to see you, Jeff. Looking
Always
forward
happy
to this
to
conversation.
Yeah, good to be together. So this week, we want to talk about something that you're calling the intentional love affair. And I've read your essay and your notes, and I get it. You say that there are three foundations to an intimate relationship, two of which can be taught or are taught, and one of which sort of remains this mystery.
Yeah.
And so the two that could be taught is friendship and problem solving. And then this love affair, this third thing, is the mysterious one. And I sort of get that. And so why don't we maybe start from there?
Great. Well, it's more than being in mystery. It's forbidden or illegal to teach it to people under 18. That you do it with your, and if you teach it to your kids, as I did, their friends will be bummed about it. My son used to ask me for advice about his first serious love affair, and when she found out about it, she flipped out. They had a big argument, and they finally got a compromise. If they couldn't resolve it on their own, he was going to ask me to help, which of course mandated them resolving sexual issues. Probably worked well for them for their sexual relationship. I don't know. I didn't ask about it. But the thing about it is that, yes, we can teach problem solving, we can teach friendship, but we're not allowed to teach having a great love affair in this country.
And you're talking about actually literally teaching it to children.
Oh, yeah. In the Netherlands, they start teaching sex education at 4 and 5. They teach the kids about anatomy, and they teach them about physiology, and they teach them about being respectful, and they teach them about gender. And then about 8 or 9, they start teaching them about intimacy. And 11 or 12, they start teaching them about how to be a lover with another person. They bring the families in so the parents discuss it. And it continues to go. And their outcomes for their kids are outrageously better than the West. They have way fewer abortions, way fewer STDs. 90% of the time, the first time a kid has sex is with somebody they care about. It was a good experience. I just turn those upside down, and that's America. Okay. And so it's clearly a superior way of teaching people. And there are predictable consequences of having it be illegal to forbidden to teach people about one of the three foundations of an intimate relationship. And what that means is that that's going to work their way into their moral system, where it begins to feel immoral to be conscious of and intentional about your love affair, because what we do teach our children is to deny their sexuality and to dissociate from their sexuality and to resist input about their sexuality, certainly to be ambivalent about sexual pleasure, certainly be suspicious of anybody that wants to participate with them in heightening sexual pleasure, and certainly don't share your sexual pleasure with anybody because you risk all kinds of consequences. Okay, so there's an awful lot of cultural headwind around this. So not surprisingly.
Now, would you say that's, I would certainly, I don't disagree with that. But maybe it's just different language, but wouldn't we say that's developmental? And that the Dutch are a stage ahead, and they are. I mean, yes. Scandinavia is more green than the U.S., more orange, more modern. They're more postmodern in terms of culture. And I'm trying to think of when, if you talk about when did we ever have this?
We have it in islands. There's little islands of it all across the United States. Little private schools, public schools with gifted sex educators. And the culture in general is way more sex positive than it was when I was a kid, way more sophisticated in terms of understanding. So
sure.
these
Yes.
dynamics are slowly getting better as our culture basically is getting more orange and green and less amber and orange. And it goes up and down, like right now, taking away rights for take away LGBTQ rights and stuff. And and yeah, the Family Law Act in 1989 mandated abstinence-based sex education because the religious right has that power.
Yeah.
It's just part of the dynamic in the United States, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
And also the nature of what we expect from intimacy has changed dramatically, and how we do intimacy has changed. When I was a kid, you get married so that you can have sex with somebody, the rest of your life. In the last 3 or 4 years, you get married, and that means you can't have sex with other people generally for the rest of your life. Yeah. It's telling you what you can't do more than what you can do. And so there's a lot more expectation for a relationship to work on the level of friendship and love affair and problem solving.
Yeah.
And in couples that do that are happier couples. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, you're in favor of that. You're in favor of, once you get married, you have sexual monogamy.
Not exactly.
Not exactly. Okay.
So I'm going to make a point, and then I want to talk about that because that's a really fun topic. Yeah. Because I've been looking into consensual non-monogamy. There's apparently a lot of research on it that I wasn't aware of. So that was part of my preparation for this talk. Mm-hmm. There's the friendship. So a lot of couples come in, and this is one of the reasons that cuted. I don't know, like 4 or 5 couples that were dealing with this issue the last couple of months. Couples come in and they're dissatisfied with their sex. Okay. And it became an issue and they're arguing about it. So, they come in. And when they come in, usually there's a dynamic that's keeping things suppressed. Frequently it's the pursuer distancer one, or the promoter resistor, where one person says, let's have sex. The other says, I only want to do when I feel like it. They have more responsive sexual, this is more active. Sometimes this is the guy and this woman, but sometimes it's the other way. And so the resistor gets resentful and frustrated, and this guy and the promoter gets more irritated, which makes him or her way less attractive. And then the resistor, feels put upon. And okay, imagine that's going for 3 or 4 years, and then they show up in my office. Okay, I always think, what if you would have showed up the week after this started? It would have been so much easier. Yeah, occasionally couples will do that. So anyway, they come in. And both of them are certain that they have the solution to this problem. The promoter says, if she just had sex with me more often, then our problems would be solved. And the resistor says, if he just didn't put pressure on me and just didn't give me a lot of shit, I'd be more interested. I mean, that's not always the case. And part of my job is to convince them that they're both right. Okay. It's not like you're wrong. It's such an integral thing.
I know. I love it.
You are both so right about what you just said. And now we got to find a way through. And the way through is they shift from being non-intentional about them. They're not intending to grow to be better lovers. To, now I'm intentional about me doing stuff to help us be better lovers. That transition from not being intentional to being intentional is the hugest, most difficult transition in sex therapy. It's kind of taken for granted in all the other sex therapies, and I think since it's the main thing, that's why I wanted to talk about it, because if you're in a relationship, a sexual relationship, an intimate relationship, longer than a few weeks or a few months, at some point or another, there's going to be a problem with sex. And when there's a problem, it really requires somebody to be intentional about fixing that problem. If you are unable to be intentional about fixing that problem, it's not going to get fixed. It's going to get worse. Okay. So that transition from being unconscious to being intentional is just a huge, huge transition. Okay?
Yeah.
Um, and and so part of it's funny, like part of being a therapist is kind of like being a salesperson. You have a vision of what their life could be like if they just were, healthier with each other. And
Uh-huh.
you want to sell them on that vision so that they're willing to risk being different and they're willing to risk being vulnerable to do stuff. And being sexuality is one of the hardest areas to do that because we got so much shame and so much weird stuff, and especially because we got a lot of competing sex drives. And if you don't really understand that you got a lot of competing sex drives, you end up having an awful lot of twisted moral entanglements. For instance, we're wired to be both monogamous and we're wired to be polygamous. We like new, exciting people that we're attracted to, they're attracted to us, where there's polarity, but we also want to pair bond and feel secure. Okay. And the miracle of humans as one of the only of 3% pair bond species is that as far as the research goes, only 15 to 25% of women and 25 to 45% of men will cheat while they're in a marriage. Okay, none of the other pair bond species can say that. They all cheat when they have an opportunity, all of them. Okay,
Even those ducks and geese and those guys, so swans.
Yeah, swans. Give them a chance. They'll fuck their brains out with somebody else. Prairie voles, they'll cheat on each other.
I knew it. Those prairie voles.
Yeah, those those prairie voles. It's supposed to be all monogamous.
Not so fast.
A sexy prairie vole. They'll go for it. Okay, but humans. Well, Jesus, like 55 to 75% of guys will not cheat, and 75 to 85% of women don't. That's just the miracle of consciousness right there.
It is. Now, so are you saying then that as we evolve, so we're going to continue to do this.
Yeah.
We would evolve into where we would have both?
Yes, in fact, that's happening because the humans take the drives. By the drives, I mean, there's a drive to, have sex right now. There's a drive to flirt with somebody exciting. These are different sex drives. There's romantic infatuation, which is 11 different hormone systems get activated from 6 to 18 months, where you're literally intoxicated and addicted to another person. There's intimate bonding, where you want to create a family, but it's less urgent. There's jealousy. You get into mate protection, but there's also jealousy is an erotic, it's a sex drive. Sometimes when someone cheats, you hate them and you want to have sex with them. Why?
Yeah.
It's,
Been there.
Yeah. Wow, we can talk about that. Imagination, sexual fantasy there's a whole, so all those drives together need to be dealt with us as humans. And then you have two people in a pair bond relationship, and then they have to navigate with each other. And in this culture, we're taught to do it not intentionally and unconsciously.
Yeah. Okay,
well, good luck with all that. We're kind of dealing with outmoded orange and
amber, traditional.
Well, starting with that amber thing,
all the movies, and you think about all of that, and just the acculturation of that.
Well, and also let's look at the plus side of amber. Amber provides all these forbidden things. Well, sexuality really likes violating forbidden areas. Okay. That makes it even more exciting to some people. The transgressive aspect of it is highly erotic for some people. Now, why does that work? Well, it fits in with other drives, dominant submission drives, the drives to have position on different hierarchies. The drive for a woman, to be claimed by a high status guy.
There's red. I mean, there's that warrior where it's dominate and submit.
Yeah, the Genghis Khan.
Erotic, and it is missing in a lot of modern relationships because it violates all sorts of actually new structures of gender politics.
which desexualizes relationship. The most
Yes.
common problem, sexual problem in the United States, is sexual disinterest. That's more than anything else. That's the most common problem.
We talked about young people, a couple times ago about, the less sex.
Less sex, having less sex later, being less interested in the things that they're doing that are interfering with their sex life and so on.
Yeah.
And
a lot of that is porn.
Yeah.
Especially for the men. It's just, they're in a virtual world of sexual saturation.
Without complexity.
Without complexity.
If you're with a person, you have to deal with a complex other person.
Yes.
Even in a secret affair, you do. Okay. When you're doing porn or when you're hiring a prostitute, which is way messier, more dangerous, and more expensive to just go online, you're in a really simplified sexual environment where the rules are simple, they're black and white, it's about my gratification. And I have a right to my gratification. Why? Because it's my fucking computer and I can watch what I want. Or because I gave her $200 and, now we have a deal going. Okay. It simplifies things in a particular kind of way. Women reading romance novels, which are the most common, the most frequently bought book in America, are romance novels bought by women.
Mm-hmm.
Becky was just telling, Becky likes to read those. She gets all moved by them and tells me the stories about her romance. So this is her having sexual variety through her imaginative, because we're humans, we turn drives into art. And so she actually going out and having sex with other people? No, but she's reading these books and she's beautiful and he's, but she's not accepted. And, he's like, with the other nobles and stuff. And then they're down on him and then he kicks the bully's ass and they can't keep their hands off each other. And boy, is she having a good time with that. She's not doing that with me. She's doing it in imagination with all those people. Yeah. Somebody come in and somebody decides to be intentional. Okay. Oh, we're going to be intentional. Once you decide to be intentional about sex, there's all different kinds of schools that kind of pretend that they're different, but they really aren't. They're all practical, but they have different emphasis. For instance, there's practical romantic people like Esther Perel, and who does, she's a woman who wrote Mating in Captivity, where she says you have to have safety and adventure. And she's right. You have to have safety and adventure. But it's a romantic thing, we don't have the safety and adventure. There's a woman named Peggy Kleinplatz wrote Magnificent Sex. She studied people that had magnificent sex and said, these are the qualities. It's kind of a romantic ideal. Tantra. You ever go study Tantra? There's a romantic ideal that you're going towards. There's practical scientific people like John Gottman. John Gottman studies couples that are miserable sexually, couples that are delighted with each other sexually, and he found the differences. Interesting, though, the main difference between miserable sex couples and joyful sex couples is that in joyful sex couples, when one person says, let's have sex, and the other person says, no, I don't feel like it right now. The other person says, oh, that's fine with me. Anything else I can do? Okay. That was the one characteristic that distinguishes. Okay. The practical, scientific. There's a guy, Stan Tatkin, who has a psychoneurobiological approach to couples counseling. He does attachment theory and interpersonal neurobiology. Also very relevant, right? There's practical moralistic people. They have a more, like this guy, David Snarch, wrote Passionate Marriage. His thing is you should be differentiated. He stole that term from Murray Bowen. You should be an individual on your own. And that's what creates good sex. Two people standing on their own.
Isn't that something?
True. Then you have Susan Johnson says, no, it's two people that are attached. You have my back and I'm safe with you. They're both right. It looks like they're disagreeing, but they're not. And then there's practical, which to me is integrally informed sex therapy, which is, everybody, once people become intentional, now it's our job, if you're helping them, to find a way that lights them up, but it doesn't have to be the same one with each one either. Find a way that lights them up further. And this is, remember I said, we'll get back to polyamory. Mm-hmm. Well, here we are. One of the things that people experiment with is other partners. Becky and I were non-monogamous, consensual non-monogamous for together for 9 years. before we decided to become monogamous with each other. Okay? And that gave me a lot of experience, with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, I had enough experience to say it's not for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not for other people.
Mhm.
Right now, 3 to 7% of the people in this country are engaged in consensual non-monogamous. 33% of bisexual guys do it, which makes sense.
Mhm.
Think about it.
Mhm.
20% of people have tried it at some point. So it's something that excitement with the transgressive and with the new person, the drive to be with a new person, but not within the old amber form of fidelity betrayal. It's a new form where we're kind of looking for something that works for both of us.
So you talk a lot about the secret affair. So this is basically the non-secret affair.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. I thought about giving a free copy of my book, 100 Reasons, on my blast on this, and I decided not to for a couple of reasons.
Your book, just to plug it, 100 Reasons Not to Have a Secret Affair.
Yeah, and then now if you want it, you got to go on my website and get a class. But I'm redesigning my website in a month or two. When you go on my website, you can get a free copy of 100 Reasons Not to Have a Secret Affair.
Yeah.
And just to let everybody know, it was some trouble for me to keep it to 100. I mean, I had to pare it down.
It's super fun, that book.
And
here we are then talking about the non-secret affair, or maybe not even affair. It's just
it's non-consensual. It's non-consensual non-monogamy. It's consensual non-monogamy.
Yes.
And so with couples that now there's a whole series of things that you do if a couple has a secret affair, there's a whole series of steps you have to do to help them heal from it. And we've talked about that in previous Shrinking Pundit episodes. Hey, go back to our catalog and check it out.
Yes.
There's some great episodes. This is couple going, okay, well, we want to feel more alive erotically. Let's look at what's possible. Just getting intentional is often very erotic for people. Getting imaginal is often erotic. Maybe you wouldn't be shocked. A lot of people would be shocked to know that people that have been together 5, 10, 15, 18 years will come into my office and I'll say, so what's your favorite masturbation fantasy? You go, oh, I have masturbation fantasy about, taking this person in this or finding this. First of all, it's hard to get it out of them in the presence of their partner, but they will. And I tell their partner, do you know about that? And they go, no, I didn't even know she masturbated. I mean, it's like, you've been together 17 years. So just going into that area is kind of exciting for some couples.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. And how do you get them to do that? I mean, do you have them like face the wall, or do you have them write it and show it to each other? I mean, really, it's.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I do with that. First of all, if there aren't any other issues. Now, by the way, sometimes people come into the sexualist. Usually, they have problems. A sex relationship is like the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
So you go in the canary in the coal mine. The canary is like reeling over, and you don't say, we really have to, give some vitamins to this canary, or better still, to switch it out for a canary that's not going to keel over. Okay. That's not what you do when the canary in the coal mine goes down. You go, there's something around here that's causing this canary. So, when sex is going down, often the friendship is suffering, or problem solving is suffering, and you kind of got to work your way through it. When you finally get to the point where they're actually willing to talk about sex, I'm a very playful person, as everybody who knows me might have noticed.
That's true.
And so I'm just playful, and I'm also very, very interested. If somebody says, I don't want to talk about my masturbation fantasy, or I don't want to talk about my greatest sexual experience, or I don't want to talk about what I like about you, or I don't want to talk about what my favorite overture for me is, my response is always, wow, I'm interested. That's quite an inhibition, because you don't mind her telling you where she wants. You don't mind telling him where you want to go out to eat. You don't mind telling them how you want them to talk to your kid when, you know,
Right. Right.
but you don't want to tell them what your favorite. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I invite them to play with me. And so
Yeah.
we start playing with it. And as we start playing in the session, this stuff starts coming out. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot of fun. And I can also feel resistance. And, you know, and I have no doubt that this is, you know, you could call it cultural or developmental, or, you know, one of the great achievements of modernity, you know, actually, well, let me just put this out there and see what you think, is that the sexualization of children became taboo.
That's right.
And that, I mean, it always sort of was, it was under the surface, but in traditionalism, it's rife. It's all over the place, and in the earlier stages.
Absolutely. That was the Athenian ideal, was a guy with a young kid.
With a teenager.
Now what on the surface, what Orange did was say the sexualization of adults sexualizing kids is forbidden. Okay.
Yes.
But it was overinterpreted into seeing children as sexual beings that need to learn about their sexuality and grow sexually. That's also forbidden.
Yeah.
Okay, so below
the very important distinction, Keith, as we talk about this.
That's right.
Because, you know, the adult sexualization, where the adult is getting any kind of a sexual charge out of this, that needs to remain taboo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as room is made for kids to learn and explore, and damn, man, this sounds like a job for Integral.
It sure is.
And it sounds like a job for the next generation of Integral.
Well, you know, like the Netherlands, the Netherlands did it and are doing a pretty good job with it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I think it's inevitable, and it's interesting to talk to you about it because I'm getting a clearer idea of some of, you know, it's what we talk about with evolution. We differentiate, we make things that were blobs into things that are separate things, and we begin to understand the difference between adult child sexualization and child sexualization.
Yeah, which is child and just child sexualization. The kids understanding themselves as sexual beings, as gender in some fashion.
Yeah.
All that kind of, you know, in every one of my books, there is some mention somewhere, not everyone, but I think probably in like at least 8 of the ones I published. Some kids are fooling around, having a good time, and they get discovered. And then some parent handles that in a good way with the kids and with the other parents. Okay. That supports them being accepting of themselves and their sexuality and this kind of stuff. Now, obviously, there's another agenda that I'm having around this. The other agenda about it is that the beauty of Amber is that the sex drives are so powerful that, at least in tribes, they were regulated by customs that came from the gods. Okay, so in tribes, people knew who could be sexual with who under what circumstances, and everything. So far in the tribes that we've studied, you know, unless they're authoritarian tribes, and then it's just red. But you know, if they're actual tribal tribes.
Yeah. What we would call the purple meme.
The purple meme. Okay, so with red, it's Genghis Khan. Amber provided constraints that help people regulate the drives and protected people from other people's drives.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was a huge step forward. That was great. Okay. Orange expanded it into the more of an individual value meme. You know, I want to be able to have my kind of gratification, but we kept the don't exploit and amplified the don't exploit children thing.
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, the whole child labor stuff being reversed is so weird.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just the nature of the culture now.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Amber really had, so we have very, very, very strong moral foundations around the sanctity. It violates our sanctity foundation. Sexuality is very tied into the sanctity.
Yes.
sacred and profane. It feels profane for people to violate a sexual.
Yes, it's one of the 10 commandments.
Yeah, right. It's 10 commandments.
Don't covet your neighbor's wife.
Right. And now we have another one. Don't be sexual with children. Like
yeah, totally. Yes.
We have like a little, like appendix to that one. And so it requires postmodernity really requires us to realize that our moral systems are always evolving. And that if we don't allow that, we're going to get stuck and run head on into a moral standard that we're unwilling to examine. Yeah. If we can examine it, then just the act of examining a moral standard from kind of a polarity thinking thing, being a Sharma stuff, begins to change that moral standard. And what Kohlberg found when he looked at that, he found a seventh level of morality that was very, very relativistic, very, 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 very context dependent. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's required often when you are trying to go from a non-intentional to an intentional love affair. Mm-hmm. The reason why you haven't been intentional is there are moral standards you've been unconsciously following. And so those need to be examined and then reevaluated and refined, not gotten rid of, refined. Yes. And so part of that is just our conversation about consensual non-monogamy. You notice we're talking about it as a thing that we've tried. It's fine with other people want to do it. Don't have any problem with it, particularly the consensual part. I don't care to do it now. Really cared to do it at the time. And it's not because I'm less or more moral now. It's just because it's more fun for me to be monogamous now. And it was less fun to be non-monogamous back then. But, occasionally I have people that I work with where it's not working. One person says, look, I'm going to want to do consensual non-monogamy. And it's fascinating working with those couples. I haven't worked with a bunch of them. I've worked with quite a number. But anyway, negotiating those things are very interesting. Like, yeah, you can do it, but not develop a relationship. You can now date, have a couple of experiences, but not really. Okay. Or, yeah, you can do it, but not kiss. Okay. I mean, and now what we're doing is people kind of going into what is my own sexual landscape? Yeah. What matters to me. And if it's a conversation about, okay, I want you or me to have some kind of sense of fulfillment with each other, but I want to be sensitive to something else. Yeah. Like jealousy can either make you want to kill somebody. 25% of the murders in this country, love triangles, or it can be erotic. Imagine your partner fucking another person being fucked. Well, yeah. Okay, so it depends on. So imagine it as you explore these things, you run into these automatic moral traps, that keep coming down, and you need to examine them. Oh, you have a moral reaction to that. Yeah, that's just wrong. Okay, whatever it is. Go, oh, what's wrong with it? Okay. Well, so as we explore it, then as that loosens just a little bit, now the more possibilities. Yeah. But all of this runs off of making that transition from being unconscious, not being intentional, to being intentional.
Absolutely. No, it's amazing.
Yeah.
What happens when you get intentional with another person? You're willing to communicate with them. You're willing to be seen. You're willing to see them. You're willing to challenge the assumptions and even the emotional responses and all of it,
And so here's the cool, the final thing about this. So one of my favorite practical romantic people is this social scientist named Peggy Kleinplatz, who advertised for people that had magnificent sex. She said, I want to know who you are. I don't know how to put it out.
Yeah, I'd like to know that too.
She got 80 people. And so she did intensive interviews with these people. And, they were gay and straight, and they were disabled and not disabled, and they were polygamists or monogamous. A lot of them were in their 60s and 70s because it takes a long time, to learn how to have great sex for a lot of us.
Yes, it's true.
And uh, and so when she did that, and she described, they described their experience, there were several things that just one, there was just a level of joy in having another person where we're going to trust each other and be open with each other, and we're going to go to Candyland. You know,
Yes.
Mr. Perel says, sex is a place you go, it's not something you do. And we're going to invest some energy and time into this. And boy, are we going to have a good time. And that's exactly what happens with these couples.
Oh,
And they
nice.
work hard for it. And it's all, of course, it's all consensual. And so if you're somebody that wants to be non-monogamous, relatively few people maintain that form. Some people do. Here are people that are doing it in a stable fashion and having a great time. If you want to have passionate monogamy, here are some passionate monogamy people really making it work for themselves, and talking about how they did it. And so what that means is, like, however we're wired, there's room for us to move forward. And if we have a partner and they're willing to work with us, we can find something that's going to work pretty well for both of us.
Yeah.
One way or another. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got that third, that you notice how, as you do that, we're kind of predisposing. You're not going to be able to do that if you can't solve problems with each other. And you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have a good friendship. I mean, those three foundations, good friendship, love affair, and problem solving, you have that with someone, you don't want to lose that. You want to protect that. You want to, as Gottman found, the couples that were happy together, they cherished each other and they were grateful for what they have. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're taking care of those three foundations, you're doing that. And, what I wanted to talk about today was this whole thing about the intentional love affair. That's a huge, big deal in this culture. And it really is the fulcrum point. All the systems, the sex therapy systems are great. I like them all. But really where the rubber hits the road is right at that point where you
say that point again.
The point is that my sexuality is dependent on whether this other person is right. It does the right thing. And I don't have any control over whether I'm going to have a good time or not. Okay. It's just, and it's kind of up to chance. Or my sexuality is entirely in control of this other person who decides when we have sex and we don't have sex. Another great study, people found that the frequency of gay couples was kind of off the charts, and gay couples were a lot better with consensual non-monogamy, gay men. But the frequency of lesbian couples and heterosexual couples was exactly the same.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, what that says is that from a statistical standpoint, the woman is controlling frequency. Okay. Just statistically. Okay. But if a guy goes, well, she's totally in charge of when we have sex. Oh, I can't have sex unless something. No, we have a system, and I have things that I can work on, particularly with my problem solving and my friendship and my sexuality, that can influence you, and you're open to be influenced with me as you're doing the same thing. That transition from, I don't have to change, you have to change, to I'm willing to change and I'm willing to trust you to change so that we can be more fulfilled. That transition from being non-intentional to being intentional is the transition. That's the point, that if it's navigated and people are on board for that, good things generally will happen. Okay? If they're willing to receive influence and change. If they're not, it just breaks on those rocks again and again and again. And once they decide to do that, there's a whole lot of directions you can go, which we've been talking about. And, there is what's right for you. Who knows? You're a unique human being with your own gender, really, and your own.
Yeah. I was just going to say, as I look at just the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of how our grandchildren will be different from us, all of that, the gender fluidity, all of the stuff that's coming online.
I love it.
It fits into this same idea here, the same paradigm. It's like, here we are. Who are we? Let's explore that together.
Then the Gen Z kids, everybody gives them shit, but the Gen Z kids are just fine with different genders. they're just fine. To them, sex is a big deal. I'm going to wait until I feel mature enough to do it. I mean, what teenager says that? Okay.
I know.
I mean, and they're kind of clueless sometimes about racism, because most of them went to schools where over half of the people were other ethnicities.
Mhm.
And what's the big deal? It tends to be so this generation doesn't have a lot of the unconscious baggage the previous generations had. And I'm really looking forward to.
Well, and when we talk about even about childhood I don't really want to use sexualization, but just that children can inhabit that world. That's
child sexual development. Children develop sexually like they develop cognitively. We can talk about cognitive development and support it. We cannot talk comfortably or legally, at least unless it's with our own kids, about sexual development and sexual identity.
Yeah. And maybe that's even in a way okay, because I think so how are kids doing it these days? And they're doing it virtually. What kid doesn't know everything they need to know or want to know about sex?
Well,
what kid with a computer?
On 11, they're watching porn. By
Exactly.
11, everybody's watching porn.
I know. And I think there's a big, red flag about that. And I think there are clear downsides to that and all kinds of things. There's also an upside to that.
Oh, yeah. Look,
they're seeing sex. It's actually not something that is. You remember how it was just behind the veil when we were kids? It was nothing.
Horrible.
Nobody talked about it, except you talk about it with your bros, your friends, but it's all completely twisted.
I didn't even talk about it with my bros. I mean,
fair enough.
I had this family I was working with. Okay, they discovered that their 12-year-old was looking at anime BDSM porn.
Yeah.
Okay. And I gave them advice that they didn't follow. Okay. And the advice I gave if kids watching porn, first of all, is okay, so we need to kind of arrange something, because mommy and daddy can get busted if you're watching the wrong porn. So, we have to have a conversation about that. Second thing is, so what about it turned you on? Oh, you get off on, I don't know, people being tied down or women being tied down by somebody that they're interested. So that's something that's interesting to you sexually, right? Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe when you have a lover, that's something that you guys can try with each other if he's into it.
Thank God I don't have children. I mean, that ship has so sailed for me, but I get that in the sacred world to come, that's how parents will deal with it.
Yeah, like, find out who you are. If, say you like it.
Yes.
Well, say you see anal sex and you like it. Say you see flirting and see people flirting and you like how they flirt, Okay, so you're discovering what gets you off sexually. Okay, now remember, that's part of a much larger intimate relationship usually, because you don't want to do that with strangers. At least most of us don't, except it gets you off, and that's a whole nother conversation. But that conversation leads to a sense of not just self-discovery, but self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Self-discovery and self-acceptance is what leads us to integral. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's challenging and radical.
Well, on that note, on the intentional love affair and being accepting and curious leads us to integral. Why don't we declare victory on the
once again we figured it out. I'm so grateful. No, I learned a lot, Keith. I appreciate it. As always. So
and we had fun.
And we had fun.
Which people should always have when they're talking about sex.
Playful is a marker of where we're going. So,
that's right. And much love to everybody.
Yes.
And we'll talk to you next time about something else that we like.
See you next time.